Welcome to today. Welcome to another edition of the Empower Hour. I am Al Kumar.
And I'm Hanifa.
And we are your hosts each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. where we come to you with impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. Today will be no different. In the studio with us today is attorney Aristotle Teresa.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To the program.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be talking about gentrification in the Washington, D.C. area. And you know, when we promoted for this particular show, I was surprised at how much interest was in this discussion. We had like over 50 people share in one day. We've never had that before. Share to let others know that you'd be on today. So I don't know if you're just a popular figure.
Or the issue.
Or the issue, or maybe both.
It's a big issue.
Or maybe both. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share with us. So you are suing. It's a class action lawsuit currently in place against the District of Columbia government.
Yes.
For gentrification.
Yeah, in short, yeah.
Okay, well, share with us. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, why don't you first introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do, before we even jump that deep into the topic.
Right. My name is Aristotle Teresa. I go by Ari. I'm from D.C., and my firm is located in Anacostia, and I'm a zoning attorney. So I represent communities against developers and against the government.
Okay, specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. And so, again, you are suing the District of Columbia. Tell us how did we get here? How did this come about?
Well, when I first started my practice, I didn't know how I would practice. I didn't know what my area of law would be because I had no understanding of zoning law. But I knew that I didn't want to do corporate work anymore, and that I just kind of wanted to serve the area and the needs of the area. And so I heard about Berry Farm redevelopment and how they were going to be tearing it down. And I knew from like past experience that when people were dislocated from public housing that they weren't coming back.
Right.
And so I decided to go to the zoning hearing to just kind of like see what was going on. And so when I appeared at the zoning, well, I didn't appear, I just kind of was in the audience. And so I was watching, and I was appalled by some of the things that I saw that the zoning commission was doing to Berry Farm residents who were representing themselves in that matter. And so I offered my help, and they received that, and we went to court, and we prevailed on the legal issues. Yeah.
So you were able at that point to halt the process of the zoning laws, or where they were doing demolition in the Berry Farm area.
Well, what was happening was there's a small area plan, which is basically a government planning document, which speaks to like neighborhood level future plans. And so, you know, there was a small area plan for Berry Farm, which said that they were supposed to account for the hardship and dislocation of residents, and whoever was supposed to redevelop the site was supposed to take that into account and avoid it. And so we argued that they weren't doing that, and when we were at the zoning commission said that, hey, that's not their responsibility, even though it was in the statute for them to follow. And so when we went to court, the court agreed with us. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
So when I was can you tell us a little bit, what exactly is the Creative Action Agenda?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a document that I came upon after doing a lot of these cases at the Zoning Commission. So I had done a lot of these cases in Buzzard Point, Poplar Point, Union Market, River Terrace. I had done these cases all over the city, and I was noticing that the Zoning Commission kept messing up. And it wasn't even so much messing up. I feel like they were just outright ignoring our clients' concerns, even though it was within their authority to regulate, and so they were deciding not to regulate on those issues, and I was trying to understand why. And I started looking at policy documents, and I found the Creative Action Agenda, Creative Economy Strategy, Cultural Plan DC, which states that they're going to change land use designations, which are the sorts of things that are contested at the Zoning Commission, in order to attract people of a certain age and people who make their incomes in a certain way. And so, I studied more about like the creative action economy and all that stuff. It's actually from an urban planner named Richard Florida.
Okay.
And so he actually has a theory about how cities develop, which states that cities don't necessarily develop from museums or like like civic institutions, but if you can attract like cool people, then they will attract like other cool people. And so the cool people that they decided were the people who could drive an economy, or people who were within this creative class, which skews white, which skews highly educated, right? And so those were the people that the city decided to change in land use for, and to attract them.
The laws against the civil laws, so you can't. So it's against the law to do that, because now you're discriminating.
Now you're because in DC, in DC there's no 14th Amendment because it's not a state. And so rather than the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, they have a very robust Human Rights Act, which protects against discrimination in housing for a source of income and age. And so the Creative Action Agenda is a very explicit statement of which discriminates on source of income. These are literally documents saying that we want you to make your income this way, and if you do, we're going to find ways to house you.
Yes. So I have now. I know you're specifically. We're talking about gentrification, and we're talking about the lawsuit. Now, for those who feel like, specifically, I find this among like what we call millennials, where we feel like gentrification is good for the neighborhood. Specifically, when neighborhoods that we consider bad neighborhoods, it's bringing in new development, it's changing the look of the neighborhood. Is that such a bad thing? Is gentrification such a bad thing? And if it is, what is the middle ground to where you move new people in, but you still kind of maintain the culture of the community? I don't even know how that's possible.
Right. Well, I'm biased because I'm part of the community that I live in, and so I'm against it. But they're biased too, right? So they're the ones who are receiving these benefits.
Yes.
So of course they're gonna say that this is a good thing, because they're the ones receiving these subsidized housing, and the government's making policy to make the city easier for them to live in and harder for us to live in.
Right.
So I think that they're biased, I'm biased, but it's against the law.
They're benefiting.
Regardless,
so
right.
that's sort of why that's pretty much being said. Because when I say millennials, I'm not even talking about specific races.
Right.
I've met black millennials that feel exactly that way.
Yeah,
so that's why I put that.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is nothing new, right?
Yeah.
There's always been black people who have benefited from colonial paradigms, and who've
personally benefited.
Right, who personally benefited and who are not members of the community and purport to speak for the community, but really they just speak for themselves.
Good point.
So you being a part of the community, so that's what I'm asking, what is the middle ground? Because whenever we talk about gentrification, the conversation always goes towards just gentrification is just bad, period. But let's say they want to see a community developed, right? What is the solution to that without driving out the poor?
Right, and I think the solution is inclusive development, right?
What does that look like?
Well, we formed a group, me, Jahar, and like several other members of the community, Tendani and Pulabusi L, Ayana Ford. We're starting an organization that is seeking to get some sort of benefit from the development that's occurring, and also try to control the means of production and provide entrepreneurial training, provide outlets for the youth. And so we really just want to be included in this process, right? Because right now we're not being included.
And pushed out. Now,
Right.
who's involved in this class action lawsuit against the government
Right.
for gentrification?
Right, and so CARE is a part of the lawsuit, which is a group I just named. It stands for Current Area Residents East of the River. I have 2 Berry Farm residents who are part of it. I have residents from Buzzard Point who are part of it. I have a resident from Union Market who is a part of it. And I have 2 residents who've been seeking housing. And CARE is a group with over 20 members.
So is this a large class action case, or
It is.
Can others join in the process at this point if they wanted to?
Well, the way it works is you define the class in your complaint, and so when I file the complaint with the court, I define the class, and it's very broad, and that class has not been approved yet. And so when the class is approved, then I'll know all who could be a part of it. But what we suggested to the court is very inclusive, and it's going to include a lot of people in DC, not just the named people. So the named people are part of the lawsuit, but also this is something that we proposed as a class action, and that will not be decided until the court decides on what to do with these motions to dismiss that have been filed by the government.
Then let me ask you, has anybody else in history ever done this successfully? Filed a lawsuit on behalf of gentrification and won?
Well, I don't feel like this is a lawsuit against gentrification. This is a pattern and practice claim. So I've done over 14 zoning appeals, and in each of those cases, we allege the government has done some misdeed. And so what we're seeing is that this isn't just a mistake. This is discrimination, and it's to further this creative class policy that's happening. And so they've kind of labeled it as a gentrification lawsuit because it's easy, but really what's happening is these are patterns and practices of people being disenfranchised at the zoning commission when they've appeared before them, and the reasoning behind that is to further these discriminatory agendas like the creative action agenda, creative economy strategy, so on and so forth.
Yeah, because as I'm listening to you, I'm here. It doesn't sound like necessarily gentrification is the issue. It sounds like there's some shadiness going on.
Absolutely, it's corruption.
Right,
it's corruption.
Exactly, behind closed doors, and that's kind of what you're standing. Okay, right.
And we see that with Jack Evans right now. We've seen it with DC Public Schools. I don't think it's any secret that DC politics is pretty corrupt right now.
What would be the outcome of a win? So, what can we see? What can we expect differently to take place that the community would benefit from?
Well, for us, it would be stronger oversight of the zoning commission, so that they weren't not allowed to, not follow the laws, and also some sort of monetary compensation, because what they've done has sort of represented thefts. Because if you could imagine, if we appear before the zoning commission, right, and we're arguing that these laws need to be followed, and the zoning commission saying, hey, we're not going to touch it, it's not something that involves us, that diminishes our ability to negotiate with the developer. So many times we're coming to the commission and we may be willing to back off our opposition if you're willing to do something for the community. But if the zoning commission is taking that leverage point out of our hands by saying that's not something they consider, that's reduced our ability to negotiate. And so, we would like compensation for that, because all of this stuff has sort of been a theft that's just kind of pushed us out of our neighborhoods.
Yeah, I agree, because I know somebody personal, very close to me, who was affected by the push out, where she was in subsidized housing. I mean, she worked and she made a decent living for herself and her child, but they came in, it was southwest area over
Right,
near
absolutely.
Navy Yard,
Yeah.
that area.
Mm-hmm.
And they told her that they were going to remove everybody and then redevelop and they
bring
could
them
come
back.
back.
Yeah.
But when it was
happens.
time for her to
Right.
come back, they put up all these barriers, all these stipulations
Yep.
that she had to go through, what they
Mhm.
did not tell her when they told her to leave. So she
Right.
wasn't able to come back because she didn't have a perfect credit score.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, with some other things that
Yeah.
she had to jump through, and so she had to wind up relocating and settling in Prince George's County.
Right, and so not only that, I know what development project you're talking about,
Mm.
Arthur Caper Homes.
Mm.
And so just recently, they went to the zoning commission and asked for another extension. These people have been out of their homes for almost 10 years, and so the developer's saying they need more time even to rebuild their
Yeah.
homes. So it's like this stuff is never going to happen, really. And these are the kinds of things that happen at the zoning commission, you know, in a half hour. Things that happen in a half-hour hearing can affect hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
Is there, like, usually when the topic of gentrification comes up, I'm usually looking for, like, gentrification, I personally feel is inevitable in, like, specific
Mhm.
certain areas. It's like development now, how they go about doing that, and who gets exploited
Mhm.
and who gets pushed aside is a whole nother story,
Right.
right? But is there something that people of color
Mm-hmm.
can do, since we're talking about Washington, D.C., to safeguard themselves?
Well, yeah, I think that they need to appear at these hearings.
Mm-hmm.
So if they hear about a development that's going to take place, a lot of times what happens now is a developer will come to the community and, you know, they'll visit the neighborhood organization or the ANC, the Area Neighborhood Commission, and people will go to those meetings and feel like they've, like, impacted the meeting some sort of way. But really, that's not something that helps any. Really what you have to do is you have to oppose these people in a legal capacity. So if when they're going to the zoning commission, you have to oppose them at the zoning commission to preserve your right to appeal them in the Court of Appeals. And, you know, when you oppose them and you do it in a legal manner, that shows them that it's going to cost them money, and that's the only value that matters to them. Is when it's going to cost them money. So when they come into your community, they may even like hire like a babysitter to watch your kids, bring some sandwiches, and pretend like they're your friend. But at the end of the day, you know, they're going to get over. That's what they're there to
Right.
do. And the only time they offer anything to the community is when it costs less
Yes.
to offer that to the community versus the expenses of opposing.
So why are we not showing out to these particular meetings, you think? Are we not getting the memos? Is the announcement like just a little write-up in the newspaper? What is it that, are we just not interested? Why do you think that this is, because I feel like if we're not showing up to the meetings, we're catching stuff at the tail end, and the damage is already done.
And whose fault is that?
Right.
I think, well, the zoning commission only has to give notice of the hearing for people who live within 200 feet of a project.
Really?
Yeah.
How do they get the
Notice.
notice?
They get notice in the mail. And so
Okay.
it's only
Okay.
people who live within 200 feet. And so I think that's problematic.
200 feet.
Yeah, only
That's-
200 feet
that's
because, you know,
small.
these projects affect people like 10, 20 blocks out.
Right.
As big as they're making them now. So I think that's faulty.
Right.
So they only have to give 200 notice within 200 feet. And the ANC is really the political body responsible for informing the community.
Okay.
But a lot of people don't go to ANC meetings. For example, some of these projects, like, for example, Reunion Square, this project's been going on for 10 years. And so if you could imagine the ANC having meetings about this for 10 years, if you don't have like a super like interest in this,
Right.
like you're gonna
Yeah.
stop going
Yeah,
to these
absolutely.
meetings
Yeah.
because it
That'd
never
be
happens.
boring.
Like unless you're like, and so what ends up happening is people who own homes tend to go to these meetings because they know that if the project happens,
Yeah,
it's going to
affected.
increase their home value. And so they're the ones who are like super interested in this stuff, and so they'll stick it out for 10 years. And it's like the same 5 or 10 people in a community who do this, right? But like people who work at night, people who have like other things to do,
Right.
who are struggling to get by, like they don't go to these meetings. And so they don't hear about the zoning hearing. And so really that's on people like myself, people like Jahar, people like Eddie, to like go out and like let people know that, hey, this is what's happening. Here's how it's going to affect you. Show up for an hour or two tonight to make sure that your voices are heard.
So what I'm hearing is if there was better street organizing going on the ANC side, then there would be a lot more people at these meetings.
Again, I wouldn't rely on the ANCs, because in a lot of these communities, the ANCs, they answer to the homeowners, because those are people who vote. Like when you look at Ward 8, you know, Ward 8 had an 8% turnout one session. So like the 8% of the people who turned out to vote are people who own homes.
Right.
So they know, you know, the people, all those people know what's going on. It's on the people who like are being hurt by this stuff, and the people who care about the folks being hurt by this stuff
Gotcha.
to get the word out.
Gotcha. What about those who don't live in the DC area? Let's say people like me who are just a concerned citizen. I'm in the Prince George's County area. I don't live here. I don't have a stake, so to speak, in it on the ground. But I want to support. I want to help. What would be your benefit? I mean, what would be your suggestion to me and people like me?
Well, I would just say, you know, social media is a tool to like spread like what's happening and what's going on. And also, you know, there are opportunities, like I said, there are groups like CARE who are in the community, door knocking and stuff like that. Like if you wanted to participate in that, like I'm sure you could.
Does CARE have a website?
Yeah, it does. www.caredc.org.
And that's CARE
Uh-huh.
DC? Okay.
Usually, like is there like a space on the website that tells you about these meetings that we're talking about?
Yeah, so there's a calendar on the website. The next meeting actually is tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are they usually in the evenings?
Yeah, the zoning meetings are normally at 6:30.
Okay.
Same
Okay.
place, 441 4th Street Northwest,
Okay.
Washington, D.C.
Great. Where does the mayor stand in all of this? What is her take? I mean, is she in support of what you're doing? Let us know. What?
The mayor is very much opposed to what I'm doing, what people like me are doing. The mayor's position has been to double down. The court has actually ruled in our favor a few times. And rather than kind of address the concerns of the community, the mayor's like figured out ways to like kind of circumvent the court's ruling and go around that. So it's almost like a game of cat and mouse right now.
Why is that? You think?
Well, I believe that racism, inequality, and exploitation is so baked into the system at this point that they just have to do it. That's just what has to happen for anything to work now.
Wow, that's unfortunate.
I think I agree with that, and that's why a lot of times we're seeing people that look like us
Right.
exploiting us,
Right.
you know, because it's so ingrained in the system, and they're also trying to get ahead and be a part of that system. And then once you try to become a part of the system, you become a part of the problem.
Yeah.
Pretty much, because you're going to end up exploiting people that
Right.
look like you, you know. So
Yeah.
that's politics too.
Yeah.
Big part
For
of it.
sure.
Do you have support from any of the politicians in the DC area? I mean, do you have like more opposition than support, or
Well, I
is
mean,
it an uphill battle?
do politicians ever really support like the struggles of people? I mean, I think that like you know, ostensibly some have, but you know, I'm still waiting to see results.
Okay, so
So-
you're basically like a one-man show.
I'm not. I absolutely am
No.
not. Like
Okay.
I have the support of a lot of community members, other activists, organizations. You know, like I could not do this by myself.
Have you guys had a hearing already? I didn't catch if you said that.
Oh,
for the case.
For this case, or for the lawsuit?
Yes.
No, we have not had a hearing yet.
Oh, okay.
No.
Is it soon?
Well,
or?
we think that there will be a hearing soon because what happened was we filed lawsuit 2018 in April.
Okay.
And the other side filed a couple motions to dismiss.
Okay.
We opposed them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the judge saw that and referred the case to a magistrate,
Okay.
which is basically the judge saying, hey, these motions to dismiss have been filed. I'm going to send this to another judge so they can look at it, give their opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and write a report about it.
Mm-hmm.
And once that other judge writes their report, then I'm going to give both sides a chance to respond to that report. And when I get all of that back, I'm going to make a decision on the motions to dismiss.
It seems to me like this is like a pattern of not just here in D.C. as far as gentrification is concerned. A lot of major cities in the country is going through the same process at the same time.
Right.
And I'm wondering, so to me, that tells me that there's some powerful people sitting around the table and
Yeah.
mapping this thing out.
Uh-huh.
It just doesn't happen haphazardly
Right.
like this,
Uh-huh.
so systematically.
Right.
What would you suggest to people? What are like some of the clear telltale signs that, here it's coming to my neighborhood. I can see, change.
Right.
Change is coming. Is there like signs that people can kind of pick up on to determine that their neighborhood is about to be totally reconstructed?
Right. I would look at the zoning hearings. I would look and see what's happening at zoning. Anytime you see developers coming in looking to increase the ability to build. So like, if a developer's, like for instance, say a developer buys like a lot, and right now on that lot you can only build 2 stories.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so they go to the zoning commission and they're like, oh, we want to build 10 stories. Right? And so say they spent $200,000 on that 2-story lot. When the zoning commission approves their 10-story development, that $200,000 lot then becomes worth $1 million because they can build 5 times more. Right? And so developers are highly incentivized to increase the buildable envelope for a site.
So
And
basically to get as much use out of that small site as possible.
Absolutely.
Versus
Yeah.
like a mom and pop shop wanting to
Right.
come in and do something.
Yeah.
Huge developers.
Exactly.
Got
And
it.
so when you see that, that's the first sign that something's going down in your
I
community.
see.
And
But by then they've had many meetings.
well,
By the time
possibly,
you notice.
but you could still
Stop it.
go to the zoning hearing and contest it.
Okay.
You can still go to the zoning hearing, contest it, and see what comes of that, and possibly file an appeal. Because a lot of times, you don't have to win the appeals cases to be effective, right? Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have to take this.
Okay.
This is my son. Hello? Yes.
Well, if you're just tuning in, you are watching the Empower Hour. We do this each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are actually interviewing attorney Ari Teresa Aristotle, Ari for short, and he is talking to us about gentrification. He's actually currently in a class action lawsuit against the District of Columbia government for zoning laws that they are not in compliance with. And so, so we appreciate you guys tuning in, and definitely share the information so there's more Washingtonians out there that can help. So, my question is, I asked the earlier signs.
No, I was going to ask,
gentrification.
as far as the community, like the group that you started, you say the name of it is CARE. What do you guys need from the community that would help you guys in this particular lawsuit?
Just manpower.
Yeah.
Manpower. That'd be good.
So the numbers help. So if
Yeah.
if I have 30 of my community members with me to come to these zoning, it's a lot more impactful
Right.
than just one.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So the more people that get
More
involved,
people,
the better.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I read something in one of the articles about some of the past mayors, Fenty and Gray, former mayors. They were on board with a lot of these practices as well.
Yep.
Would you confirm? You would confirm that?
I would.
Again, going back to what my sister
Yeah.
said.
Yeah,
about,
and you know what I'll say about that though is that I think at some point, probably with Williams, that like they meant well. I think that what was going on was, you know, the city was in the red, and so they needed more tax money. That was a lot more egregious than I've heard things about Williams, saying that he actually had a 2020 plan, a plan to increase the city's population to 1 million within 20 years, and that the way that he was going to do it was attracting dinks, dual income, no children.
Really?
Yeah. Dual incomes,
There's
people,
a
no
name,
children.
Dinks. Okay.
Dinks. Right, and so this is because, you know, they didn't want to have to, like, pay for welfare, pay for anything. You know, they just wanted people with high incomes to pay their tax money. They didn't want anyone that was a drain.
Because that's
right?
what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Like, what is the purpose of the creative
class?
Yeah, class
Yeah, it
agenda.
sounds
The agenda,
similar.
like, right.
Yeah.
So what is the
They're
purpose
doing
of
it.
them gentrifying or bringing a certain age group, income group? Like, what is the purpose? How do the higher ups benefit from that? Just for people
Right.
that are listening that may not understand.
Well, it's tax based, right? And so if these people have jobs and have like high paying jobs, then they're not taking any government subsidies supposedly, but that's not what ended up happening. Like right now, they are taking government subsidies. They're like one of the biggest takers of government subsidies that exist right now.
what
because,
kind of government subsidies?
most of the housing that's being built right now is for people making 60% of the area median income. And so,
Which is what?
which is about $60,000.
Okay.
So people are receiving affordable housing subsidies, and they make 60 grand a year.
Oh, I got you.
So these are people who've like graduated college,
Right.
you know, have like professional jobs,
Right.
who are receiving like
Oh, interesting.
subsidies for housing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all
Making
this.
60 grand?
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
So we're thinking
Yeah.
all of the bulk of these houses is going to welfare recipients, and
No,
those who
absolutely.
have
That's
5
not how it works
children.
anymore. Like
Wow.
it's shifted. It's kind of
Interesting.
yeah, it's degraded from that to like
Okay.
now a lot of the subsidies, like when you hear about a TIF, right, a tax incremental financing.
Okay.
So in Union Market, which is an area in DC, the government has offered tens of millions of dollars of tax incremental financing to a development, which is all luxury. It only has 8% affordable housing. 60 AMI, right? Only 8% of the 100% of units are 60 AMI.
Right.
And so they offered that development a TIF, which is basically saying that, okay, we're not going to charge you property taxes for the next 18, 20 years. And that's, property taxes are worth so much. So like if you have like
they're offering this to the developers.
to the developers,
Okay, go
to the
ahead.
developers.
Okay.
And so basically these people are coming into the city and not paying any property taxes, but they're increasing like the strain on the infrastructure.
Right.
They're using public schools, they're using public transportation, they're using the cars, they're using emergency systems,
Right.
but none of them are paying
Tax-free.
taxes into it,
Interesting.
right? And so like that's another way that we subsidize like rich
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone around is paying taxes, and the way the city is saying, the city says, well, we'll eventually make money from it because the taxes to the surrounding area will increase because we've built this. But what happens when the taxes to the surrounding area increase? That means that the poor folks get pushed out.
Right. So
Right.
because
Yeah, exactly.
The ones that are actually paying taxes.
The ones that are actually paying taxes.
out.
Which sounds
Right.
so confusing because it
Exactly.
sounds like I'm gonna help you because you don't need me to.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
weird.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. I've never thought about that. I've never thought about it that way.
The help.
Yeah.
You
Right.
don't want to help them because they need the help.
That's a
we rather you
very
because you don't need it.
that's a
like-
very succinct way of putting it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
That's like the
insane.
same. It's similar to what comes to mind is when we go for a loan.
Mhm.
Those who have billions can
Yeah,
get a loan, no
exactly.
problem.
Easier, yeah.
Right.
But those who struggling alone,
Right,
they're going
right.
to give a
Backwards.
tough time
Yeah.
trying to
It's
get
backwards.
the help they
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so what? Anything else? What else would you need? Would you need the people to know about this scenario that we haven't discussed yet?
Again, just manpower. That's like the major thing, and like
Yeah.
really like educating yourself on these issues, and just coming out and like supporting communities who are fighting this stuff,
Yeah.
and fighting back against these narratives that like, oh, gentrification just happens.
Right, right.
Like
It is what it
yeah, it is
is.
what it is,
You
right?
get pushed out because you
It-
don't have money.
it doesn't.
That's what people
Yeah.
usually, yeah.
These are governmental decisions that are
Yeah.
being made.
And what I think people fail to realize too is that when you're in a lower income bracket, yes, your neighborhood is going to look a lot nicer, prettier, new stuff. But a lot of times, if you go to the grocery store, you're not going to be able to afford things because now the new upscale groceries are coming, the gas and all. So your cost of living actually rises.
Yeah, exactly.
Because because you're now in this gentrified area.
Right.
And it sounds like the people who really need to come to these meetings, Ari, are the people who don't necessarily own homes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what it sounds like
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
They're
Those
most
are the ones that are
impacted.
but they're not showing up.
Right.
So
most
yeah, so
impacted.
if you're watching and you're
Right.
in the DC area, the meeting
Yeah.
is tonight.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night,
Yeah.
if you can make it out. Can you give them the address again?
441 4th Street, Washington, D.C.
At 6:30.
Yeah, Suite 200.
Okay.
And let me just say this to you, Ari. I appreciate you doing what you do. It's not enough of us out there hitting the pavement on the ground, doing the grassroots work. That your work, if successful, I should say, when successful, is going to help thousands of people. And and I think that we really should do more taking out and celebrating people like you in our community.
I
Because
appreciate that.
you are important, extremely
Thank you.
important. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
And thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep up the good work.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right, family, this has been the Empower Hour. We thank you again for tuning in. Please share the information. That's all we ask. If we said anything that has been impactful to anybody out there, and I know in the D.C. area it has been impactful information, share it so we can get the word out to a larger audience, and we can help each other, help ourselves. Until next week, take care of